Well, round 13 of the 2021 Radical Challenge Championship is on the grid here at Donington Park, and the cars are any second now about to roll off onto their formation lap around the Grand Prix circuit configuration for this first of three races that they've got over the course of this weekend. This is one of the two sprint races that they've got coming up now. We'll see the pit stop race taking place tomorrow. It's not the final weekend of racing for them because they do have their championship finals over in Belgium at Spa-Francorchamps on the 18th and over the Spa-Francorchamps on the 16th and 17th of October. So let me just verbally guide you through the grid. The way that they line up is car number 100, Michael Clark, with the Radical RXC Spider, starts on pole position, and alongside is car number 52. That is Mark Richards, who currently lies fourth in the championship standings. Row 2 of the grid is number 58, Anthony Ayres, and alongside is 23, Jason Rishover, who is currently third in the championship standings and was third in the championship last year. And row 3 of the grid sees number 44, Matt Bell, the current championship leader, 7 wins under his belt so far, sits alongside the number 11 car, which is Chris Short, who was former runner-up in the Radical SR1 Cup, graduated up to the Radical Challenge a season or so ago. Row 4 of the grid is number 9, Chris Preen, alongside number 5, which is Jerome de Sadlier, currently second in the championship standings, a former Radical SR1 Cup champion, was the Swiss driver from 2017 it was, and moved over to the Radical Challenge Championship since then. And row 5 of the grid is number 14, John McLeod, regular in this series for a good number of years, alongside number 80, Peter Tyler, another one of those drivers that's graduated up from the SR1 Cup. Row 6 of the grid is number 19, Dean Warriner. Again, we've seen him in the SR1 Cup in the past, and alongside is number 88, which is Jacek Jalonka, and alongside Jacek Jalonka is going to be the next row of the grid, which is row number 7, James Winslow, former Australian Formula 3 champion was James some years ago, and for company he's got number 28, Elliot Goodman. And row 8 of the grid is number 24, Peter Brooks, and 31, which is Rod Goodman. The penultimate full row of the grid is number 6, Stephen Lake, alongside 20, which is Wesley Fongini, and the final row of the grid should see Phil Brown line up in the largely all-red car towards the tail end of the field. Well, this is round 13 of the championship. Michael Clark's Radical RXC Spider starts from pole position. In this one, we've not seen too many cars out in the Masters class over the course of this season. Michael Clark appeared for the first couple of races at Snetterton in what was April, and then was, I don't think, present at Brands Hatch on the Grand Prix circuit. We certainly haven't seen him since then, so it's great to see one of the Masters class cars back in the series. He qualified almost 7/10 of a second quicker than Mark Richards at the wheel of the first of the SR3s that we've got in the field. Mark, who was 6th in the championship last year, was 10th in 2019, 7th in 2018, and is currently 4th in the championship standings, so arguably on for his best season since moving to the Radical Challenge Championship. But the cars are completing their formation lap. The rolling start is about to get ready to go. 25 minutes are on the clock for round 13 of the 2021 Radical Challenge Championship. The lights go out, and it is a good start from the pole sitter Michael Clark as Mark Richards looks to try and tuck in behind him, but are almost 3 wide here as they head up towards Redgate Corner, and I think it is just going to be Anthony Ayres that comes out in second. 3 or 4 cars through the gravel trap. Peter Tyler is through the gravel trap. We've got spins, 3 or 4 cars all over the place. I think they will all ultimately rejoin, but the big loser there, I think, was Anthony Ayres, who skittered his way. Sorry, the big loser there was Peter Tyler, who skittered his way through the gravel trap, whilst Anthony Ayres, I think, has picked up the early race lead by the look of things, and Michael Clark, the pole sitter, no longer in second, down to third as Matt Bell, the championship leader, feeds his way through, and Jason Rishover sneaks through as well. So the SR3 is out of the box quickly. The RXC Spider just taking a bit longer to get up to speed as they head up towards Coppice Corner for the first time. And Jason Rishover in his newly acquired 3rd place, looking to try and make good his escape, but the RXC Spider will be a little bit quicker in a straight line and might just be able to ease its way back past the SR3, and yet with fair ease Michael Clark squeezes his way back up from 4th into 3rd place in the early stages of this one. I think despite all the shenanigans at turn number 1, everybody has safely made it through the first 3 quarters of the first lap as in towards the breaking out the Melbourne hairpin comes our race lead. You just see the nose of the car there just run out wide a little bit. Cold front rear tyres still for Anthony Ayres a little bit, which meant that the car didn't quite turn into the corner as he initially expected it to. Michael Clark diving up the inside of the championship leader, Matt Bell, to pick up second position. And as they then start to work their way towards a conclusion of the lap, is Michael Clark going to be able to squeeze his way through into the lead of the race? I think he might just do so. The bigger, heavier car, though, has to brake that little bit earlier. Anthony Ayres might get squeezed on the exit. No, he hangs on to it. Anthony Ayres still hangs on to the lead of the race. Rather diminutive stature of the SR3 compared to the RXC Spider that sits behind in the hands of Michael Clark, the pole sitter. So down through the Craner curves goes the number 58 car of Anthony Ayres. You can see already in the background that Michael Clark is coming back under attack again at that part of the circuit from the championship leader, Matt Bell. The black car with the Dayglow flashes to the front of it, but not a great deal that Matt Bell can do. The extra power of the RXC just sees Michael Clark edge his way ahead on the straights, but it isn't quite as nimble as the SR3s through the twiddly parts. Matt Bell in third, looking to attack, but needs to be conscious that Jason Rishover is not far away in fourth position, the number 23 car, in the hands of the driver who was third in the championship last season, lies third in the championship standings this season. Jason's number 23 car, silver blue with its Dayglow flashes to it, threading its way through the Fogarty S's on lap number 2 at this stage. Now Stephen Ayres out front and leading the race. Is he going to be able to still hang on to it there as they start to head up towards the tail end of the lap? Don't think we've seen a great deal of Stephen in the championship so far this year, but at the moment, loses the lead of the race as diving up the inside comes Michael Clark. He just about gets the RXC stopped in time, but the SR3 will be quicker off the corner. However, the RXC Spider will have the legs on the straight again. He goes through to grab the lead of the race, so through goes Michael Clark into the lead of the race. The Masters class car leads. Stephen Ayres, who is looking good in second position, is looking to try and push on. And for Stephen Ayres, he's really just concentrating on the sprint series this year. We've not seen him out in the main solo challenge. It's really just the sprint races that Stephen Ayres appears in. He is leading the sprint series challenge in the 2021 standings. You can either opt to do all of the races in the season, you can just do the sprint races, or you can just do the endurance races, and that will dictate as to which championships or championship you are eligible for. Now Jason Rishover still pushing on in fourth place. Matt Bell, already 7 times a race winner so far this season, sitting there in third place ahead of Jason Rishover, who is yet to claim a win so far this season. Looking one way, looking the other. Surely he's too far away as they're heading towards the S's, and indeed he is. He tucks back behind Matt Bell. Everybody else seems to have paired off rather, don't they? They've all got somebody to squabble with in this fantastic field of cars here at Donington Park for the first of 3 races this weekend. Leading 4 round through the Melbourne hairpin. Chris Short is there in 5th position. John McLeod in 6th, Dean Warriner in 7th, and Jerome de Sadly are not quite sure what's happened to him so far this weekend. Driver who's second in the championship standings was only 8th quickest in qualifying and is still circulating in 8th position. There is his car, the white car with the red flashes right in the background of the shot, the number 5 car, heading over the start-finish line now. He's got the grey and lighter green car of Dean Warriner ahead, but he's not really making any inroads, I'm afraid. Elsewhere down through the order, that's a good lunge up the inside for Mark Richards. Not sure quite what's happened to him. He's a long way down through the order, Mark Richards, after, I would imagine, the turn number 1 issues. Worked his way past James Winslow's car there. But for that car there, Jerome de Sadlier, he is pushing hard. If anything, he probably pushed a little bit too hard in qualifying, because he lost his best 2 lap times in qualifying for going beyond the circuit limits. So that was probably what undid qualifying slightly for him and dropped him down into what was 8th position on the grid. Bouncing over the curbs goes John McLeod. He is in pursuit of the car ahead, which is the all-black car of Chris Short. Under pressure again is Matt Bell for 3rd position. Jason Rishover can't as yet managed to squeeze his way through. So the black car with its Dayglow yellow headlamp covers in the hands of the championship leader, Matt Bell. Still hanging on to the last of the podium slots at the moment. So round through the Melbourne hairpin, there goes Chris Short, followed by John McLeod, Dean Warriner, then Jerome de Sadlier. After Jerome de Sadlier, then James Winslow, I think, would probably be the next one up. No, Mark Richards got past him, of course, on that lap. So Mark Richards up to 9th, James Winslow completing the top 10 currently, as they flash their way back over the start-finish line. Now, last time through, the race leader was caught a little bit by Stephen Ayres. The gap first to second came down by 0.3 of a second on that lap. It's still around a second is the gap that Stephen Ayres needs to try and make up to get himself right onto the coattails of the race-leading RXC Spider of championship returnee Michael Clark. But of course the cars excel at different parts of the circuit. The middle part of the circuit here, probably from the old hairpin up towards McLean's, favours the Radical RXC, but then when you get into the twiddly parts again, that's probably where the SR3 starts to have the advantage. Matt Bell using all of the curbs both into and out of McLean's corner to try and edge up onto the leading pair, forever conscious that Jason Rishover, who leads the Fangio class for the older drivers in the field, is still sitting there in 4th position. They start to head down the straight and heavily onto the brakes in the background. That's Jerome de Sadlier that's off in the background, driver who lays second in the championship standings, and that was all of his own accord, I think there, just a bit too quick heading in towards Coppice Corner, and I'm afraid he's lost out there. The number 89 car of James Winslow goes through, and that means Jerome de Sadlier has rally-crossed his way back onto the track. No longer in 8th, he'll be down into something like 10th position at the end of the lap. So this is lap number 5 that's about to be completed. The top 4 fairly equidistantly spread, I've got to say, as they thread their way out of the left-hander at Goddard's. But it is Michael Clark, still from Stephen Ayres, from Matt Bell, from Jason Rishover. Chris Short, now is he edging up in 5th position onto the cars ahead? No, he lost 0.2 of a second to the cars ahead. Jerome de Sadlier in the background of the shot does come through in 10th place, yet, so the number 5 car down to 10th position. Elliot Goodman in 11th, under pressure from Chris Preen that sits behind. No matter where you look, there are fights going on. There's the number 24 car, that's Peter Brooks, another graduate out of the SR1 Cup, under pressure from Peter Tyler, who has also made his way through that similar process through the SR1 Cup into the Radical Challenge, and they are at the moment fighting for 14th and 15th position, and that will be 3rd and 4th in the Fangio Trophy. So that is for older drivers in the field. The categorisation in terms of what age you have to be to enter the Fangio Trophy varies year to year to year, because what they do is they almost take an average of the full season entries and then work it out. So some years it might be 40, other years it might be 45 perhaps. So it does vary from year to year, but at least it allows the slightly older drivers to maybe have their own little squabble for the championship amongst themselves, the Fangio Trophy, whilst also being able to score points in the overall championship. And for the overall championship, by the way, because it's a sprint race, 40 points for the race win. If you claim the race win, it's 35 for second, and so on it diminishes from there. So nose to tail, there is the number 9 car of Chris Preen in pursuit of Elliot Goodman. He gets a good run on the way up towards the braking area for Goddard's. Is he going to be able to squeeze his way through? Yeah, through he goes. The number 9 car up the inside. Chris Preen gaining a position over the 28 car of Elliot Goodman. So Elliot Goodman, who was 4th in the championship standings last year, looking to try and fight his way back as they head up towards Redgate, but the job is done as far as Chris Preen is concerned. Place gained. Peter Tyler still busy fighting away as well with Peter Brooks, but the order for those two has shuffled as they came over the start-finish line. The grey and Dayglow car of Peter Tyler now ahead of Peter Brooks. Behind them, we've got 2 cars that are quite close together as well. Jakub Chalonka at the wheel of the number 88 car has got Rod Goodman's metallic blue car. Not quite in his Hankook wheel tracks, but close enough to apply a bit of pressure. It's a 25-minute race. We are already 10 minutes into it. The race leader was caught to the tune of 1/4 of a second last time through, Michael Clark, because Stephen Ayres in second place put in the fastest lap of the race that we've seen so far, 1 minute 31.541 for Peter Ayres, who, as we say, has largely just concentrated on the sprint races over the course of the season. So 2 of those today. Endurance race, the pit stop race, takes place tomorrow, and here is the gap. It was 0.752 of a second. It's come out by 1/4 of a second as the race leader Michael Clark responds, and now he sets the fastest lap of the race. So the fastest lap of the race pinging around between the 2 at the moment. 1 minute 31.362 for Michael Clark, who might have had just a brief little bit of respite, but now needs that he has to push on once more at the wheel of the number 100 car. So the RXC Spider through the Craner curves, working its way out of the old hairpin, Starkey's Bridge, and then up towards the sweeping left-hander at Schwantz curve. Take the curb on the inside. Make sure you hook up the curb on the inside of McLean's corner. Let the car run out wide and up to the very edge of the curb on the exit of it. And then this one here, grab the first apex. Don't worry about the second apex at Coppice. There's the first apex. Let the car run wide. Mid-corner for the second apex. And it looks as though he might be gaining quarter gain on this lap. Jerome de Sadlier gaining a place there after his moment and dropping behind James Winslow. Through goes de Sadlier. That'll be back up into 9th position for him, following his mistake a few laps ago at Coppice Corner. Now at this stage, we haven't really got inside the top 10 cars crawling over each other. We know that Stephen Ayres, if anything, has probably caught the race leader again a little bit more on this lap. The race leader was about 0.6 of a second quicker than Stephen Ayres through the first sector, but Stephen Ayres is about 0.7 of a second quicker through the second sector. And as they now come through the left-hander at Goddard's to conclude lap number 8, we are now pretty much at the half-distance points of this race. 25-minute race, 12.5 minutes to go. Through Redgate Corner, lead advantage has been stretched that time by a further 0.3 of a second. Matt Bell, the championship leader, still sitting there in 4th position. Good little squabble further back down through the order as well. This is over the start-finish line now. This is going to be Elliot Goodman coming under pressure from Peter Tyler. Peter Tyler on the outside line for Redgate Corner though. Takes a wide line in, tries to sweep back on the exit, get the undercut if he can on the run up towards Hollywood. The two of them are going to be side by side through Hollywood as well, down through the Craner curves. Whilst right behind them is Peter Brooks. And well, for Peter Tyler, he's made it stick there. And that, I'm afraid, is Mark Richards. That's the man who's 4th in the championship standings, who's claimed 1 win so far this season. That came up Brands Hatch. And I'm afraid that's retirement for Mark Richards, who qualified on the outside of the front row of the grid. Now, was that a problem with the car? Might that be a legacy of what happened at turn 1 at Redgate Corner, potentially? We don't know. But for Mark Richards, that is bitter disappointment, because in this championship, every single round counts. You do not drop any scores at all in this championship, and for Mark Richards, that's an enormous shame. A driver who didn't do the first 3 races at Snetterton, so was always going to be on the back foot, but was 4th in the overall standings. So we're on lap number 10 currently. Peter Tyler looking to try and gain another place if he can. Oh, too quick into the corner, watching his mirrors, I'm afraid. There was the number 6 car of Stephen Lake, who has a spin. Will hopefully get the car fired back into life again and will continue. But that is going to be positions lost for him, I'm afraid. So Peter Tyler over the start-finish line. He is running in 11th position at the moment. Elliot Goodman outside of the top 10 places, in 12th position for Elliot Goodman. That is not usually what you would expect from Elliot, for a driver who's finished in the top 6 in this championship for the last, 3-4 seasons. He was 5th in 2018 and in 2019 as well. He bettered that and went 4th last year. But for Elliot Goodman, it's a bit of a difficult season for him, really, at the wheel of that number 28 car. Elliot has not finished on the podium so far this year. He's had a couple of 4ths, he's had a couple of 5ths, he's had 3 6th places, but at the moment, outside of the top 10, running in 12th position and coming under pressure from what is now Yannick Jalonka, who sits behind. Because Yannick Jalonka has managed to squeeze his way through past the 24 car of Peter Brooks on this lap. 10 minutes remaining. Battles all the way through the field. Now Yannick Jalonka's next target is going to be the car ahead, which will be Elliot Goodman. And can Jacek Jalonka work his way through? Well, there is the sad sight of Mark Richards being pushed back by our fantastic marshals, making sure that he's back behind the wall, out of harm's way, which means that Mark will be a frustrated spectator for the final few laps. And Jalonka still having to stick his elbows out to try and see if he can gain places, which he has done there. Through and ahead of Peter Brooks he goes on this lap, and having done that earlier on in the lap, he was closing in on Elliot Goodman, but then runs wide coming out of Redgate Corner, manages to gather up the small moments, which drops him back into the clutches of the car he'd recently taken the place away from And closing in on them also now is going to be the number 31 car of Rod Goodman that sits behind. Elliott, his son, further up through the order. Now there's 19. That's Dean Warrener. He is in 6th position. In fact, has just dropped to was in 7th position. He's just dropped to 8th by the look of things, because Jerome de Sadler has gone ahead of him on this lap. So the Swiss driver fighting his way back through the order after his problems a few laps ago. And there's Jalonka off and through the gravel trap at Coppice Corner. Damage to the left rear of his Radical as the Valor Motorsport prepared car rejoins the circuit. Broken the fiberglass bodywork on the left rear of it. He's going to have very dusty Hankook slick tyres that all of the cars run on. He's going to have air ducts and brakes full of gravel. You can see the gravel pinging away behind him as he heads onto the brakes and in towards the braking area for the chicane, the S's. But with 7 3/4 minutes of this race to go, finally we're seeing a bit of daylight between first and second. There's Michael Clark past Starkey's Bridge and heading uphill in towards the left-hand Kinkert-Schwantz curve. Stephen Ayres was 2.2 seconds adrift of him at the beginning of this lap, and it looks as though that gap has come out yet further this next time through as they head round through McLean's Corner and up towards the right-hander at Coppice. So difficult to see the entry point at Coppice Corner. You have to brake and turn the car into the turning point to grab the apex before you see it, so you commit to the apex before you actually see where it is. It's a wonderful corner when you get it right, but it's not easy to get right. It's almost muscle memory, you could argue, that you have to know where to stamp on the brakes, know at which point to turn in, and when you hook it up onto that curb on the inside, it's a really satisfying feeling. And that at the moment is what exactly all of these drivers are doing, pushing hard. A few little mistakes along the way, but the race has certainly settled down now at the front. Towards the tail end though it hasn't, because this is Stephen Lake, who had his problems with his spin, and he has now got the number 88 car, I should say, of Jacek Jalonka sitting right behind him. And there is a slowing car. Now that looked like Peter Brooks, was it? Yes, it was. So Peter Brooks has had a problem. He's also, I think, skidded his way through the gravel trap at Coppice Corner and has thankfully been able to dig his way back out again. So 6 minutes just over of the race remaining. Michael Clark on course potentially for a race win. Jalonka still fighting away with Stephen Lake, but has now got ahead of him. Stephen Lake looking to try and return the favour if he can, but he's not within a position to do so as they head in towards the braking area for the left-hander at Goddard's. So again they will head over the start-finish line and chalk another lap into the book. They're now on to lap number 13. You can see that little bit of bodywork just flapping around on the left rear of the number 88 car, following its trip through the gravel at high speed up at Coppice Corner a few laps ago. Just cosmetic damage, won't affect the car overly, might just affect a little bit of the handling of the car. Slightly more aerodynamic drag, you could argue, as well, with the bodywork flapping around. It looks as though one of the securing ratchets has come adrift on it as well. So as long as the air doesn't get underneath the bodywork, should be able to see Jack Jalonka be able to continue in this race without too much of a problem. Here's a car we've not seen much of there. This is Wesley Fongeli, who sits there in 17th position at the wheel of the number 20 car. Good to see Wesley out again, a driver who we have seen in this championship sporadically over the course of the last season or so, really, Wesley Fongeli. And he'll be looking to see whether he can do anything in the remaining moments, but he's got a huge amount if he wants to make up. He's the best part of, 20 seconds behind anybody, so I think 17th is probably as good as it's going to get for Wesley Fongeli. He's in penultimate position in the race, whilst this man here continues to lead, and of course has the fastest lap of the race as well. The way the championship scoring works, as I mentioned, 40 for a win, 35 for second, 30 for third, then it's 27, 24 and 22. There's an extra point for pole position in each race, an extra point for fastest lap as well, and that fastest lap is going the way of the race leader currently, Michael Clark, who, as we say, we haven't seen huge amounts of this season. Stephen Ayres in second position. So Clark leads the Masters class, Stephen Ayres leads the Sprint class in second place, Matt Bell, the championship leader, sits there in third. There is the car that's running around in last position, which is Paul Brown, another driver who is just doing the sprint races, I think, over the course of this weekend. And he's a fairly new driver to motorsport, is Paul Brown. You can still see the novice cross on the tail end of the number 35 car, suggesting that he's not got the 6 signatures on his licence yet to be able to upgrade it and remove the novice cross. And he, very shortly, may well be gobbled up by our race leader. So, 14 laps completed, 3 minutes to go. So, the lap they've started, and 2 more thereafter between Michael Clark and what would be a first win of the season in the Radical Challenge Championship. Number 28 car of Elliot Goodman, say a little bit off the pace this weekend really, 12th position and not really able to push on to the same degree as we've seen him in the past. Ahead of Dad though, because it's Rod Goodman that sits behind him, and for bragging rights in the family, 12th and 13th positions is what they're squabbling over at the moment. So over the start finish sign goes Elliot, followed by Rod. The gap between the pair of them was some 1.3 seconds there or thereabouts, and who was lapping quicker on that lap? It was Rod that was lapping quicker. He carved a quarter of a second out of the time of Elliot, so the gap is coming down as Rod Goodman looks to try and see whether he can manage to work his way into contention and thread his way through into the top 12, but for the moment he is the best part of, what, half a dozen car lengths behind. Needs to close up. Difficulty is in these cars which are hugely aerodynamic and rely on huge amounts of downforce. As soon as you get closer to the car ahead, of course, it unsettles your car. So through Coppice Corner, through the right-hander they will go. Our race leader should now be on to the penultimate lap of the race. Now, Rod Goodman is certainly closing up. Elliot was, yes, slower through the first sector, and I think is a little bit slower through the second sector. Here's our race leader. Was leading by 3.2 seconds at the start of this penultimate lap of the race. 90 seconds remaining, so there is plenty of time to complete this lap and get over the start-finish line. There's a little bit of traffic that he's already dealt with, which is Phil Brown's car. That will have to be dealt with by our second-place car and sprint class leader Stephen Ayres before too much longer. There is the number 35 car of Paul Brown. Stephen Ayres will catch that. I would imagine even after the S's he might catch it. Let's just have a look. But Phil Brown won't exactly blend off the throttle. He'll keep pushing. Moves out of the way though for Stephen Ayres, and may well let him go through before this point here at the S's, has he? No, he's sticking with it, and rightly so, because he's still far enough ahead of him so as to not have to really blend out of the throttle. It's up to Stephen Ayres to find his way through. This is further down through the order. This is James Winslow, who is looking to try and put Chris Preen under pressure, so that must have been a change for order last time through, because at the start of the lap Winslow was ahead of Preen. So yeah, Chris Preen is now up into 9th position and James Winslow has dropped down into 10th position, I'm afraid. The former champion in the likes of Asian Formula 3, we've seen him in Australian Formula 3 where he was a champion as well. He's done lots of prototype racing as well. He's won his class in the Gulf 12 hours on a couple of occasions. We've seen him in both P3 cars and P2 cars. The driver James Winslow, not sure how much radical racing he's done over the course of his career, and perhaps he's one of those drivers that isn't as well known to some motorsport fans, but has certainly had a very, very good career. So for Michael Clark, safely on to the last lap of the race. The clock, as you can see, ticked already to 0, and the number 100 car, the only car in the Masters class, is about to thread its way up towards Coppice Corner. The Masters class rate caters not just for the likes of RXC Spiders, which this car is, but also for the RXC Coupe, for the Radical SR10, which runs a 2.3 litre turbocharged engine, and also Radical SR8s are eligible for the Masters class as well, any variant with the 2.7 litre V8 RPX engine, whereas the Supersport class, which is what most of the cars are in, run the Radical SR3 1500cc engine. But for Michael Clark, he's just about to turn his way out of the Melbourne hairpin, up the hill towards Goddard's, and he is on course to win round 13 of the 2021 Radical Challenge Championship through the left-hander at Goddard's. apply the throttle, shift up through the gears, checkered flag is readied for him, and he claims the win in round 13 of the championship season. He's not doing the full season with us. Stephen Ayres is home in second place. He'll be absolutely delighted with that, wins the sprint category as well. Third place will go the way of the black car with the yellow flashes to the lights of it. That is Matt Bell, the championship leader. Fourth goes the way of number 23, which is Jason Rishover. Chris Short comes through in fifth place, and John McLeod in sixth place. Disappointed seventh, I would say, there for that white car with its red flashes, which will be Jerome de Sadlier, his main championship rival, finishing well ahead of him in the race. And for Jerome de Sadlier, so it was really a poor-ish qualifying session for him as well. And what with that mistake coming out of Coppice Corner, he wasn't the only one to make a mistake heading through Coppice Corner. We saw 3 or 4 cars skittering their way through the gravel trap over the course of that race. So it is a very difficult corner because of the blind entry to it. He will be disappointed with that. And for family honours, Elliot Goodman beats Rod Goodman over the start-finish line. The two of them, I think, drawing side by side as they head up towards the braking area. But it is a win for Michael Clark. He will be absolutely delighted with that. Won by 3 3/4 seconds in the end from Stephen Ayres, and Matt Bell was a further 7 3/4 seconds shy of that to complete the overall podium in third position. One thing we ought to mention is the car that was fourth home as well, Jason Rishover, did win the Fangio Trophy as well, so congratulations to Jason Rishover for winning the Fangio Trophy, for which he is the championship leader in that. Jason Rishover, he has already claimed the best part of 7 wins in the Fangio Trophy so far this season, so I think that makes it win number 8 for him in the Fangio Trophy. So cars just threading their way round on the slowing down lap. Our marshals busy waving away to the Radical Challenge Championship drivers, and then I think once they head in towards the pit lane, we will probably just summarise verbally the results. I'm not sure, with a few little small technical issues we've had, we're going to get any graphics, and I don't think we'll get to chat to any of the drivers potentially either. So the car's heading in towards the pit lane. Just to confirm the results for you then, the win goes the way of number 100, which was Michael Clark. Second was number 58, Stephen Ayres, and third was 44, Matt Bell. Fourth was 23, Jason Rishover. Fifth was number 11, Chris Short, and sixth was number 14, John McLeod. Seventh was number 5, Jerome de Sadlier. Eighth place was number 19, Dean Warren, and ninth place was, conveniently enough, number 9, which was Chris Preen, and completing the top 10 was number 89, James Winslow. Peter Tyler finished just outside of the top 10 in 11th place. Elliot Goodman was 12th, ahead of Rod Goodman in 13th. Jacques Jalonka finished in 14th place, with Peter Brooks in 15th place. Stephen Lake was 16th. 17th went the way of Wesley Fongini, and 18th, the last of the finishers, was Phil Brown. Only one car retired, sadly. We did see it retire out on track, and that was the driver who was 4th in the championship standings and had qualified on the outside of the front row of the grid. So a disappointing start to the weekend for Brands Hatch winner Mark Richards, who posted a retirement. So the cars are making their way in towards Parc Fermé. That is the first of 3 races we'll have from the Radical Challenge Championship here this weekend at Donington Park. They are scheduled to be back out on circuit as our final race of the day on the programme, which means it's going to be around about 6 o'clock this evening when we head back out onto track with the Radical Challenge Championship. So that's goodbye from the Radical Challenge Championship, but join us later on for that. But there's more racing coming up very shortly at Donington Park.